Destiny Payton is no longer staying silent. After years of watching the story around Chris Fletcher's divorce unfold without her voice, she has finally decided to speak and confront Nell Fletcher directly. This moment is not about sudden anger or chasing attention. It is about Destiny reaching a point where silence no longer protected her peace, but instead allowed others to control the story. At 45, Destiny has chosen truth over comfort, and that choice has shifted how this entire situation is now being viewed. For a long time, the public believed Chris Fletcher's divorce was clean, calm, and settled. The story presented was simple. Two people parted ways peacefully, privacy was requested, and everyone was encouraged to move forward. On the surface, it seemed mature and respectful. But as time passed, that version of events began to feel incomplete. Small details did not line up, and quiet signals suggested there was more beneath the surface. Destiny Payton remained mostly silent during this time. She did not go live, she did not give interviews, she did not argue online. Many people assumed that meant she was unaffected or had accepted everything as it was. But silence does not always mean agreement. Sometimes it means endurance. Sometimes it means choosing calm over chaos, even when the cost is being misunderstood. As the years went on, fans began noticing small changes. Destiny shared posts that spoke about betrayal, loyalty, and being misunderstood. She never named names. She never accused anyone directly. Still, the emotions behind the words were clear. These were not random thoughts. They reflected someone processing pain quietly while the public continued to move on. At the same time, Nell Fletcher's presence did not fade into the background. Instead, it became more visible. She appeared in conversations, social spaces, and situations that kept her connected to the divorce story. This raised questions that were never fully answered. Was she simply being supportive, or was there a deeper role that was never addressed openly? The lack of clarity allowed assumptions to grow. Behind the scenes, the tension never truly disappeared. Destiny reportedly felt that the story was being reshaped over time in ways that erased her experience. Certain details were left out. Certain actions were softened. Certain people were protected. As the public slowly accepted a version of events that favored others, Destiny was left carrying the weight of being misunderstood. What made this more painful was how silence began to work against her. The longer she said nothing, the more people filled in the gaps themselves. Silence became guilt in the eyes of some. Others assumed she was holding on to bitterness. The truth was far more complex. Destiny was choosing restraint, believing that time would bring clarity. Instead, time allowed the story to drift further from her truth. The real turning point came quietly. It was not a public argument or a viral moment. It was something subtle, almost easy to miss, but deeply personal. Destiny noticed her name being referenced indirectly again. Conversations about moving on, about past negativity, about lessons learned felt pointed. These moments reopened wounds that had never fully healed. What hurt most was the imbalance. Destiny felt she was absorbing the blame, while others benefited from confusion. The past was being used to shape present narratives, and she was being painted as part of a problem she had long stopped engaging in. That realization changed everything. This confrontation was never about the divorce itself. It was about how history was being rewritten. It was about who was allowed to appear supportive and healed, and who was quietly framed as disruptive or bitter. Destiny reached a moment where staying silent felt like agreeing to a version of the story that was not true. When Destiny finally spoke, she did so carefully. There was no explosive reaction, no emotional outburst, no attempt to embarrass anyone. Her approach was calm, direct, and intentional. Those close to her say she wanted clarity, not chaos. She wanted accountability, not attention. The confrontation with Nell Fletcher was reportedly firm but controlled. Destiny made it clear that pretending the past did not exist while continuing to benefit from it was no longer acceptable. She questioned why her name continued to surface indirectly and why she was still being framed as part of a narrative she had tried to leave behind. This moment marked a clear shift. Destiny was no longer reacting to events. She was leading the conversation. She was not asking for understanding. She was demanding respect. And she came prepared. She referenced timelines, public statements, and social media posts that did not align. She pointed out inconsistencies that had been ignored for years. She made it clear that choosing peace did not mean erasing her truth. Silence had been a choice, not an admission. The impact was immediate. Posts were removed quietly, language shifted. Certain conversations stopped altogether. Fans began revisiting old clips and messages with fresh eyes. Things that once seemed harmless now felt intentional. The puzzle pieces started to connect. What stood out most was Destiny's tone. She did not ask for sympathy. She did not position herself as a victim. She focused on correcting the record. That difference mattered. This was not about drama. It was about refusing to be cast as the villain in someone else's story. As the situation unfolded, others began speaking up as well. People who had watched quietly from the sidelines started sharing their perspectives. The silence that once protected the imbalance began to break. Questions that were once avoided were finally being asked. Fans started noticing patterns, why certain behaviors were allowed to continue, why some voices were amplified while others were minimized, why Destiny carried the emotional weight while others moved freely. These questions changed how the entire story was viewed. Destiny's actions at 45 reflect growth and control. She did not rush. She did not act from emotion alone. She waited until she was ready to speak clearly and confidently. That timing made her words stronger. This confrontation revealed how silence can be used against someone, how absence can be twisted into narrative control, how history can be edited when only one side speaks. Destiny reminded everyone that truth does not disappear just because it is quiet. The divorce may have ended on paper, but emotionally and socially, it never truly closed. Destiny's decision to confront the situation brought that reality into focus. It showed that unresolved stories do not fade on their own. They wait. What makes this moment powerful is that Destiny did not try to take control through force. She took control through clarity. She spoke with intention. She stood firm without becoming aggressive. She reclaimed her narrative without tearing anyone else down. This shift has changed how people see her. No longer passive, no longer reactive. She is now seen as someone who values integrity over comfort, someone who understands that silence is not always strength. As the story continues to unfold, one thing remains clear. Destiny Payton is no longer allowing others to define her role in a story that deeply affected her life. She has drawn a boundary, and that boundary has reshaped the conversation. This is not just a story about divorce. It is about perception, power, and the long-term impact of silence. It is about how narratives are formed and who gets to control them. Destiny's confrontation has exposed those dynamics clearly. Her voice has shifted the balance, and once balance changes, the story can never return to what it was before. As more people revisited the past, the full weight of Destiny's silence became clearer. What once looked like distance now looked like restraint. What once seemed like indifference now appeared to be self-control. Destiny had been watching the story grow without her input, knowing that stepping in too early would only create more noise. But letting it go on forever came with a different cost. The public often misunderstands silence. Many believe that if someone does not speak, they have nothing to say. In reality, silence often holds the most truth. Destiny's silence was never about weakness. It was about survival. It was about protecting herself in an environment where words could easily be twisted. For years, Destiny carried the emotional weight of being misunderstood. She watched as people assumed her role, judged her reactions, and formed opinions based on partial stories. Every time her name came up indirectly, it reopened a wound she had worked hard to close. Healing became harder when the past was never truly allowed to rest. What Destiny faced was not just a personal issue, it was a social one. Narratives gain power when they are repeated without challenge. Over time, those narratives become accepted facts, even when they are incomplete. Destiny realized that if she did not speak, her truth would be replaced permanently. This realization did not come overnight. It built slowly through moments that seemed small but carried emotional weight. A comment here, a post there, a subtle reference that others might overlook. For Destiny, these moments were reminders that the story was still active, still shaping perceptions. When Destiny decided to confront Nell Fletcher, it was not driven by anger, it was driven by clarity. She wanted answers, she wanted honesty, she wanted to understand why the past continued to follow her while others moved freely. The confrontation reportedly focused on accountability. Destiny questioned why certain actions were never addressed openly, why assumptions were allowed to linger, why her silence was interpreted in ways that benefited others. These were not accusations, they were direct questions rooted in lived experience. This moment forced a shift. For the first time, Destiny was not on the defensive. She was setting the tone. She was defining the boundaries of the conversation. That alone changed the power balance completely. People often underestimate how powerful calm clarity can be. Destiny did not raise her voice. She did not threaten exposure. She simply laid out the facts as she experienced them. That approach made it impossible to dismiss her as emotional or reactive. As word of the confrontation spread, public reaction began to shift. Fans who had once accepted the original narrative started questioning it. They noticed details they had overlooked before. They reconsidered moments that once seemed insignificant. Old posts were re-examined. Old interviews were replayed. Patterns became visible. The story no longer felt as clean as it once did. Destiny's voice gave people permission to question what they thought they knew. What made this especially impactful was Destiny's consistency. Her words aligned with her past behavior. She had never contradicted herself. She had never chased attention. That consistency gave her credibility. In contrast, certain inconsistencies in the broader narrative became harder to ignore. Statements that once felt neutral now felt calculated. Silence from others felt less like privacy and more like avoidance. Destiny did not need to explain everything. She did not reveal private details. She did not expose personal messages. She trusted that clarity, not oversharing, would do the work. And it did. The conversation around the divorce shifted from surface-level drama to deeper questions about responsibility and perception. People began asking who truly benefited from the silence, who controlled the story while others stepped back. This shift also highlighted how women are often expected to absorb emotional damage quietly. Destiny's experience reflected a larger pattern. When women stay silent, they are misunderstood. When they speak, they are labeled difficult. Destiny challenged that pattern by speaking calmly and firmly. Her decision to speak did not erase the past, but it reframed it. It allowed her to reclaim her role not as a side character, but as someone directly affected by the situation. That reframing mattered. What followed was not chaos, but correction. The story did not explode, it adjusted. The tone softened, the assumptions slowed. That outcome reflected Destiny's intention all along. This was never about revenge, it was about resolution. Destiny wanted the story to stop following her in distorted ways. She wanted space to exist without being tied to a narrative that no longer reflected her truth. By speaking when she did, Destiny showed patience and maturity. She waited until she could communicate without emotion controlling the message. That timing strengthened her position. The long-term impact of this confrontation is still unfolding, but one thing is already clear. Destiny is no longer being spoken about without context. Her voice is now part of the conversation. This moment also serves as a reminder that silence should not be mistaken for acceptance. People carry stories quietly for years before deciding they deserve to be heard. Destiny reached that moment. Her actions have changed how many people view not only this situation, but how narratives form in public spaces. They have highlighted the importance of questioning single-sided stories. Destiny Payton did not ask to be placed in this position, but when the time came, she chose clarity over comfort. That choice has reshaped the entire discussion.